Okay, imagine two superpowers locked in a brutal war that drags on for a century. Then, out of nowhere, they sign a peace treaty so bold they actually call it the Eternal Treaty. Well, that really happened, and we're going to jump back more than 3,000 years to figure out how on earth they pulled it off.
And this is the heart of the whole story. On the left, you're looking at the treaty carved into the walls of an Egyptian temple. And on the right, that's the exact same treaty, but inscribed on a clay tablet found in the Hittite capital in modern-day Turkey. This is what's so incredible. It is the only ancient peace treaty where we have the text from both sides. I mean, think about that. It's like a perfect historical snapshot from two mortal enemies.
So what are we actually looking at here? Well, it's often called the Silver Treaty, signed way back around 1259 BC. The two players were the heavyweights of the Bronze Age: the Egyptian Empire, led by the famous pharaoh Ramesses II, and the powerful Hittite Empire under a king named Ḥattušili III. And get this, it's the oldest surviving peace treaty we've ever found.
Which brings us to the big question, right? How did these two empires, after literally a century of fighting, suddenly turn around and promise to be at peace forever? Well, the answer has nothing to do with friendship. It's a masterclass in ancient politics and pure self-interest. You see, to really understand the peace, you first have to understand the war. And this wasn't just some brief conflict. This was a long, grinding war that had been draining both of these mighty empires of their people and their money for decades.
And I mean, this conflict had been going on for a long time. It all started back in the 14th century BC when the Hittites began pushing into Syria. Even Ramesses' own father fought them. The whole thing came to a head in 1274 BC with the epic Battle of Kadesh, one of the biggest chariot battles in all of history. But even after that massive, bloody fight, it still took another 15 years to finally sign this treaty.
Now, the Battle of Kadesh is a story in itself. If you were in ancient Egypt, you'd see these incredible carvings on temple walls showing Ramesses the Great basically single-handedly crushing the Hittites. It was a brilliant piece of propaganda, but the reality? Yeah, not so much. It was a messy, brutal stalemate. Ramesses was almost captured, his army was ambushed, and both sides took devastating losses. Nobody really won.
So after Kadesh, neither empire had the strength to land a knockout punch. For the next 15 years, they were stuck in this kind of ancient Cold War with a bunch of smaller fights that didn't really accomplish anything except for costing a fortune. War just wasn't sustainable anymore.
So with the war going nowhere, the story shifts to the two men at the top. You see, peace didn't happen because they had a change of heart. It happened because both kings had really big problems, and peace, suddenly, was the smartest way to solve them.
Okay, let's get inside Ramesses' head. The man was a master builder, totally obsessed with his legacy. He wanted to spend money on giant temples like Abu Simbel, not on endless, pointless wars. He figured a huge diplomatic win would look just as good on his resume as a military one. Plus, there was a new kid on the block, the Assyrian Empire, getting really aggressive in the east. Ramesses needed to make sure his northern border was secure, and that meant cutting a deal with his old enemy.
Now, the Hittite king, Ḥattušili, he was in an even tougher spot. He wasn't the legitimate king. He'd actually stolen the throne from his own nephew. And guess where that nephew was living? Yep, in exile in Egypt, plotting a comeback. So Ḥattušili was desperate for Ramesses to recognize him as the real king, and more importantly, to stop protecting his rival. And just like Ramesses, he was getting very nervous about the Assyrians.
So here's the bottom line. This treaty wasn't born out of some newfound respect or friendship. It was pure pragmatism. Both of these powerful rulers looked at the board and realized their old enemy could be a much better ally than a forever foe, especially with a dangerous new threat right on their doorstep. All right, so what was actually in this thing? What did this groundbreaking deal actually say? Well, the terms they agreed on were surprisingly modern, and they created one of the most sophisticated treaties the ancient world had ever seen.
The terms were really quite advanced. First, pretty simple. The war is over forever. Second, they formed a defensive alliance. If someone attacked Egypt, the Hittites had to help, and vice versa. Third, and you can bet this was a huge deal for Ḥattušili, an extradition clause. Any political refugees, like, say, a certain nephew, had to be sent back home. And finally, they promised to support each other's chosen heirs to the throne, which meant stability for both of their families.
And to make absolutely sure nobody broke the deal, they invoked the highest authorities they could think of. The treaty ends by calling on thousands of Egyptian and Hittite gods to act as witnesses, along with the mountains, the rivers, the sky, the sea, the winds, everything.
They were tying themselves to a cosmic promise. Breaking this oath wasn't just illegal, it was inviting total divine destruction on your kingdom.
So they signed the treaty, called on the gods, and carved it in stone for everyone to see. But the big question remains, did it actually work? What was the real legacy of this supposedly eternal agreement?
Oh yeah, it worked, big time. The treaty held, kicking off an incredible era of peace and prosperity. The two empires started trading, writing friendly letters back and forth, and that peace lasted for almost 100 years, right up until the Hittite Empire eventually collapsed. Ramesses even married a Hittite princess to seal the deal.
Now, for thousands of years, the world only knew the Egyptian side of the story from those carvings on Ramesses' temples. But then, in 1906, archaeologists digging in Turkey stumbled upon the ruins of the Hittite royal archives, and there, among thousands of clay tablets, they found this.
The lead archaeologist, a man named Hugo Winkler, knew immediately what he'd found, and his reaction just says it all. He wrote, "One glance at it, and all the achievement of my life faded into insignificance." I mean, can you imagine? He was literally holding the other half of history in his hands.
And the story doesn't end there. In a nod to its incredible achievement in diplomacy, a huge replica of that Hittite tablet hangs on a wall at the United Nations headquarters in New York City today. It's a silent 3,000-year-old reminder of what's possible.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. This treaty proves that peace doesn't always come from shared values or liking each other. Sometimes real, lasting peace comes from the cold, hard realization that mutual survival and facing down a common threat is a much more powerful force than old hatreds. A lesson from over 3,000 years ago that feels more relevant now than ever.